Time has come for us to put the drawing we've made onto a title block and print it to scale. So I'm going to go ahead and open the drawing. Here we can see the walls that we have drawn. This building is 20 feet wide, it's 24 feet deep, and we're going to insert our title block. I enter, browse to find the title block. The insertion point should be at 0. The scale should be 1 to 1, no rotation, and do not explode this. This is significant. We've drawn the title block exactly the size we want to print, 8.5 inches wide and 11 inches tall. So we don't want to rescale it. We want to insert it right at the origin so that it makes a logical placement. We don't need to rotate it, and we shouldn't have to explode it in order to change the text. We used attributes to overcome that difficulty. So here we go, OK. It asks us for the drawing title, which is floor plan, in all caps, and for today's date. And we can see that it has indeed inserted that title block. It came in at the full size. Here it is down in the corner. The attributes worked. It says floor plan. Problem is that it's too small to fit around our building. Our building is 24 feet deep and the title block is only 11 inches tall. So we've got an issue here. How could we overcome this? One method would be to scale up the title block. If we do that, however, we're going to end up having to scale it again and again. We're going to have many different print windows, and it's going to continue to be a problem for as long as we work with this drawing. So this is not the method to use. I'm going to go ahead and select that title block, delete it. What we need is a new trick. Early on in last class, we had turned off some tools. I'm going to go turn those on now again. Go up to the View tab. Click on the button here that says Layout Tabs, and look down at the bottom of your screen. You will see that there are some tabs down here. One says Model, that's in bold, and there are two that say Layout. What we're going to do is use the Layout tabs. AutoCAD conceives of the Layout tabs somewhat like a print preview. So when we click on this, we're going to see what AutoCAD sees when it sends prints. Go ahead and click on Layout tab 1 now. Okay, my current layer was layer 0, and that's significant. Whatever your current layer is, you will see a new shape drawn that is on that layer. Here we have a layout view, and in this layout view we see several rectangles, and then we see our model inside of the innermost rectangle. The large shape here, the white shape, is a sheet of paper, and AutoCAD assumes that you're dealing with an 11 by 8.5 inch piece of paper, and so it orients that horizontally on the screen. Just inside that we have a gray dashed line. That gray dashed line represents what AutoCAD assumes to be the printable area of that sheet of paper. And then inside of that we have another rectangle. The first two are not selectable. I can click here all day long. I'm not going to be able to pick anything. This third one is called a viewport. If I select that, I can see in the properties it's called a viewport. It has properties just like any other object in AutoCAD. It has a color and layer, a line type, all the way down the list. We can see how large it is. We can see it also has some miscellaneous items down below that we're going to talk about in just a few moments. What I need to do is put that viewport onto a new layer. So in the Layer Properties Manager, I'm going to make a new layer. This is called G-VPRT. It's all caps. The color for this new layer is going to be color 203. That makes it sort of purple. It will be the only layer in the drawing to have that color, and that will help it stand out on the screen. Now, when I click on the layout one of the things that's happened is that now I have many more columns in my Layer Properties Manager. You can see that we've extended all the way across here. We've got tons of other stuff and information. Most of this is irrelevant to us. The one that we really do need to focus on is the column that contains the plot setting. And so we see there's a column here called plot. They have these little icons that look like printers, and if we click on that icon on the G viewport layer, we'll see that that red no symbol shows up on top of the printer, making this a non-print layer. We never want the layer G viewport to print. I'm going to go ahead and select my viewport. I'm going to use the crossing window to do that. It's a safer method of selecting this. It leads to less confusion. I've crossed over and selected my viewport. I'm going to move my viewport to the layer that I've just created, the G viewport layer. I can see now that it is purple. It's that color 203. A little bit more about viewports before we move forward. Like I said a moment ago, they're like any other object. They can be copied, moved, resized, rotated, all of those normal types of modifications that you can do to any other object. For example, if I were to select this and copy, I could have many different viewports. You will notice that they all show the same thing. What a viewport is a window looking back into the model space. And each of these windows looks back into the same model. So this is significant because if I were to be inside the viewport, I could select the model. From outside the viewport, I cannot. I can only select the viewport itself. If I were to double-click inside of the viewport, you can see that the active viewport now has a bold line, and I am able to rescale that object in the viewport. I'm also able to select parts of that, and you'll notice that when I select them in one viewport, all of the different viewports have that same object selected. If I were to delete that object, it would delete them in all the viewports. Remember, this is a window back into the model. Over in model space, I have actually deleted those walls. So be careful what you do with your viewports. I'm going to Control Z to back up to make that wall reappear. So this is kind of interesting. We have multiple copies and we're able to scale this thing differently. We can scale one smaller, we could scale one bigger, and we would have different viewports showing the same model at different scales. I really only need the one viewport, so I'm going to go ahead and delete the others. It is possible to pan and zoom inside this viewport. If I double click in here, I can pan where my model may not show up at all. I can always zoom extents to bring it back to the middle. Another thing to notice about the viewports is when you're inside the viewports, you can see there's that view cube. My UCS icon is active. I'm able to select objects. Also, my cursor behaves a little differently. When I'm in the viewport, I get my crosshairs. When I'm out of the viewport, I simply get a pointer. When I'm in the viewport, I get a crosshair. When I'm out of the viewport, I get a pointer. Now, if I want to exit the viewport, I need to double-click out in space. To enter the viewport, I need to double-click inside the perimeter. That allows me some graphic information about when I'm in and when I'm out. So now it's time to insert the title block and merge it with this drawing. I'm going to go ahead and exit the viewport. This is important because if I put the title block in when I'm still inside the viewport, it's going to remain 11 inches tall in model space. I want to insert it in the Layout tab. So double click, and now I've exited the viewport again. It's time now to insert the title block. I enter, find your title block. Again, do not specify the insertion point on screen except 0, 0. Do not scale it. Do not rotate it. And certainly don't explode it. Everything is unchecked. Go ahead and fill in the information. Click OK. We can see now that the title block is large enough to accommodate our plan. The question is, how much bigger than the plan is it? And so how do we relate the plan to the printed size? The other problem here is that the paper in the background is obviously not aligned with our title block. So we have a couple of adjustments to make. Let's make the easiest one first, which is to move the viewport into the title block so that it doesn't overlap with the words floor plan as we see down here. Here's how this works. I'm going to simply select the viewport and I'm going to use the move command to move the viewport into position. The O-snaps can be sort of unruly at times when you're moving viewports around. There are many different things that we could select with our O-snaps. So normally moving viewports around, I either am going to use my base point out to the side or I need to turn off my O-snaps entirely. So this puts our viewport into the title block. Now we need to be careful about what scale that viewport is. So go ahead and select the viewport and look at the properties. There is a setting here that says standard scale. It's currently listed as custom. What we need to do is change that standard scale to 1/4 of an inch equals a foot. This is all the way at the bottom of this list, up about 8 lines, and we can see 1/4 of an inch equals a foot. Go ahead and click that. You will notice that the size of the plan adjusts slightly. And then once we have the standard scale set, we don't want it to change again. So what I need to do is change this setting where it says display locked to yes. And that will prevent the size of the plan from changing with respect to the size of the paper. It will lock those two together. Okay, we're almost there. The last thing we need to do is to create our page setup. Up at the top of the ribbon, we can see there's a new tab. It's called the Layout tab. Go ahead and click that. We see that there is a series of tools here. We only need one of these buttons. Click on Page Setup. We're going to make a new page setup. It's going to be called 8 by 11 vertical. The settings that we need here, we need to make sure that our printer plotter is set to the correct printer for the school, which is the 606. The paper size should automatically change to letter. What to plot should be a window. I'm going to go ahead and reselect this window, and I want to pick the corners of my title block, which are 8.5 by 11. Make sure to center the plot. And very important, we do not want this to fit to paper. We do want this to print 1:1. What we're doing here is we're printing exactly the same size as our title block. And then up here at the top, we'll pick the Y2K 4100 plot style table. And finally, set the drawing orientation to portrait. I'm going to click Preview. When you have this, you are now ready to print. So remember, we didn't start off with the print dialog box. We started off with the page setup dialog box. But this is the print you'll use. Go ahead and click Escape once. Click OK. We have that setting now in our page setup manager. Click Set Current and close. Everything's good to go. Now if you look carefully here, you will see that my viewport is overhanging the edge of my printable area. But really, who cares? It's a non-print layer anyway. We never want to see it. That viewport could be pretty much any size it wants to be. So now you're ready. Plot. We could look at the preview just to be sure. Looks great. Send it.